Hi there.
Hello.
How are you?
I am very good. How are you, Katie Cotugno?
I am great, Taylor Jenkins Reid.
I am very excited to be here tonight. What people may or may not know is that you and I went to college together
We did.
and that we were very cool resident advisors together.
The coolest.
And I have just been, I have told people for years, I don't think I can really claim it, but I do anyway, that I was like your first hardcore fan, that I've just been obsessed with you and your work since we were but kids. And so I'm excited to talk about this book tonight. So thank you guys for being here tonight. I'm very excited to get to ask Katie all of these very intrusive questions that I have planned for her. The book is Birds of Paradise. It is her first adult novel, but she has many other novels. Katie Cotugno is the New York Times bestselling author of 7 messy, complicated feminist YA love stories. She's also the co-author with Candace Bushnell of Rules for Being a Girl. Birds of California, the Barnes & Noble fiction pick for the month of May, is her adult debut, and she lives in Boston with her family, and she is here with us tonight. So hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for doing this with me. And also thank you to Barnes & Noble for having me. Like, I'm a kid from the suburbs. So like, this is like a big deal, like to be the fiction pick for the month of May. Like my dad is very proud. I think I finally impressed him. So
well, you deserve it. You deserve it. And so I'm going to ask Katie questions for about 30 minutes or so. I have a lot to ask her and a lot to reminisce about, but also please send your questions in. I want to know what you want to know from Katie, and we'll get to those questions for the last 15 minutes. So don't put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A. I won't see them if they're in the chat, but I'm going to be looking at the Q&A and just keeping track of what the questions are and who wants to know what. And so we'll get to that shortly. But for people that don't know, what is Birds of Paradise about?
Yes. So Birds of California you're fine. Don't worry.
In a day. Yeah.
It's a very common mistake I'm finding. Also, when you Google Birds of California, you get like birding guides, which is, I feel like, a thing I should have thought about.
That's probably like not, or me, I don't know, in the Venn diagram of like who's looking for birding and who wants to look for this book. I don't know. But anyway, yes, go.
Birds of California is about a guy that nobody takes seriously and a woman that everyone has written off. Former child star Fiona St. James is living a life of like quiet desperation following a spectacularly public crash and burn. She's worked really hard to sort of conquer her demons and get her privacy back, and she's not about to let anyone or anything mess that up. Meanwhile, Sam Fox played Fiona's hot older brother on the hit Family Network show Birds of California. He's gotten like real person famous. He is the lead on like a Shonda type show called The Heart Surgeon. So he is like a genius in the operating room, but a fool in love. And he really loves all the trappings that like go along with being a leading man, right? He is, surrounded by beautiful women, and he drives this fancy, obnoxious car. But when his show is suddenly canceled and his agent stops returning his calls, Sam jumps at the chance to do a Birds of California reboot. But he needs Fiona St. James to make it happen. This is the part where I'm like, spoiler alert. They fall in love. But it's complicated because Sam doesn't know like the full story behind Fiona's breakdown, and she is going to do everything she possibly can to keep it that way. So that's Birds of California.
Well said. I want to get into how you came to this story, but first, I would also just like to know, why a Hollywood story? Why a Hollywood novel? What brought you to that theme in that space?
I think like the dark underbelly of teen fame has always been like something that I knew, like that has really interested me. And I like sort of knew I had a book in me about. I have a YA novel called Fireworks that is like a 90s boy band love story that I had sort of originally envisioned as like a lot darker than it actually wound up being. Like sort of in my mind, I like had planned to get into like, like the Lou Pearlman of it all. And then ultimately that was just like not what that book wound up being. So I just like kind of had the idea of a girl who like used to be famous but wasn't anymore in my back pocket for a long time. And then in the spring of, I guess like late winter of 2020, I was just like in kind of a weird place in my YA career. Like I didn't have anything under contract. I didn't know necessarily what I was going to write next. And then the pandemic happened. And it like, for me at least, was not the sort of thing in those early days where I like suddenly had all this extra time. Like if anything, I had no. Whenever people say that, I'm like, oh, our lives are different.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't have kids, and like there's like a part of me that's so jealous, when people are like, God, what do I do with my time? And it's like, oh, I have no time.
Yeah.
So
So we had a 6-month-old and no childcare. And my mom, who like had some health stuff, was quarantining with us. So it just like felt like, like obviously like the world just contracted like very hard, very fast. And I just like started telling myself this story in like pockets of like 10 to 15 minutes at a time. It felt like it was really an act of escape for me in a way that like no writing had been for me in a really long time. And I think part of that also was like, it wasn't under contract. It wasn't YA. It was like something that nobody was
not supposed to be working on it.
Yes.
So
Yeah. It felt like very like almost like I was like doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like a dirty little secret that I had. And it really was like, writing it was so joyful in a way that like really got me through like that first pandemic summer.
Well, so you brought this up, but I think this book is it has all of the voice and the tenderness and the smolderiness that people have gotten used to in your YA books, but it is your first adult novel. So other than it being the right time in your life to write an adult novel, and to do something different, why was it this story that felt like it was ready to be your first adult novel?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, like I feel so lucky that like I've been in publishing now for like 12 years, which like I am so lucky to have, to be having this career and to like, get to write books and what have you. But I sold How to Love, my first YA, when I was 25. And I just turned 37. So I've like lived a lot of life in that time. And like, I love writing YA. Like that time of life is such like a feeling tsunami and things are so intense and it's just like so ripe for storytelling. And like, I've written senior year a lot of times. And like, I have a lot more senior years in me. Like I'm in this. But I was feeling like I wanted to, like, I've experienced a lot of things like, getting married and becoming a mom and just like, family stuff and just life stuff, that there isn't necessarily room for like in a book that like emotionally culminates at the prom sort of.
Yeah.
So I actually, when I first like envisioned, like when Birds of California first sort of came to me, like I did sort of instinctively like try to figure out how to fit it into like sort of like a YA. Like I'm like, well, maybe she's 18, like that's maybe she's not. And then I was like, maybe she's 19, maybe she's 20. And then like it just like the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh, like she needs to have like, not only does she like need to have time to have like dropped out and like hidden for a while, but she also needs to have time to like to have had time to process all the things that happened to her. Like I wanted to write a character that had that narrative distance from like the things that happened to her when she was 17.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because it feels like Fiona is the germ of this novel. I would imagine Fiona is how this story came to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Wanting to tell her story. So how did that idea first come to you, and what excited you about taking it on?
Yeah. I mean, I think that so much of this novel, for me at least, is like reckoning with my like complicity in like being a person who was a teenager in the early 2000s and like
Yeah.
participated in the grind of the like Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, like
Yeah.
industrial complex. Um, so I like, and to, to have gotten older and to have sort of just thought more about the way that we, commodify the mental illness of young women. And like, like eat it up while we get pedicures, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just sort of the smug superiority I felt when I was like, in high school and like in my early 20s about like, oh, like poor Britney, it's 2007, she's such a mess. And like, I'm ashamed by how long it took me to like dig into that and unpack it. And like, for it to occur to me that like, oh, like Britney Spears is a human being.
Yeah. Well,
And
also too, I feel like a lot of it is like, maybe you didn't contribute to the initial piece of it, but we all stood by.
yeah,
Like, that's part of the thing is like, yeah, we weren't the paparazzi and we weren't the bloggers saying it, but like we all clicked.
Yes.
We all
100%.
clicked on those links. Yeah.
Yes. And like, I'm a person that has been like pretty public about the fact that like I struggle with mental illness. Like I have anxiety. I like have struggled on and off with depression. And I'm lucky in that like I have a support system that is like very invested in my like health and well-being. And like a girl like Britney or Miley or Amanda Bynes like had a bunch of people around her who were invested in like keeping the money rolling as like as long as possible, like no matter what that looked like or what the cost of it ultimately was. So that was the thing that I was thinking about a lot. And also like the Britney documentary. Like there's one moment in the Britney documentary where they talk about like the fact that Britney Spears probably had postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Which is like a thing that like I still think about it like once a day.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I also feel like Britney Spears existed during a period of time where it was right before we understood that famous people are human beings.
Yes.
But also before a period of time in which we understood that mental illness is real.
Yes.
Like
absolutely.
we just went through a period of time in our society in which it was like, oh, whatever, that's somebody else's problem. So like we didn't talk about postpartum depression. So
exactly.
we really got both sides of it.
Yes.
That one, we're going to make fun of her because she's famous, and oh, if you have money, then you must, your life must be perfect, and you're not allowed to complain about anything.
Yes.
It's like on its face, just like a wild position that we take.
Yeah.
And then
also that if you're like clearly having a breakdown, it's hilarious.
Right. And also that we're not thinking at all about how our actions contribute to the larger system in play. I feel like now in 2022, one of the things is we have a lot more, we're a lot savvier about the way the system works. And there's a lot more of an expectation of how we're supposed to function within it. Yes. Britney was happening during a period of time in which like I wasn't thinking anybody cares what I'm clicking on or that my clicks are contributing to something.
Right. Of course.
And I think you sort of present that really well in the novel, because when we meet Fiona, we understand that she has things that that she sort of wears on her back that are things that she's just been made fun of. She's become a joke because she did certain things. And the public within the book were never really prompted to ask themselves to have any compassion for her. And so when we meet Fiona, is she a wild child? Is she trouble? Or is she, a victim of a system that is made to take advantage of people like Fiona? Yeah. And I think you rendered that very beautifully. And she's a very complicated character. And I think as all of your characters are. And I think you've done that really well here. So let's talk about her in particular, because she's more than just an actress, right? She's more than just this the star of a TV show. She functions, today, Fiona works in a copy shop,
Mhm.
and she, lives with her family. And so who is Fiona when we first meet her?
Yeah, I would say Fiona would tell you immediately and instinctively and loudly that she's fine.
Right.
And
Right.
she's fine. She's great. She's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, she has dropped out of the spotlight. Her mom took off about 5 years ago. Her dad, who suffers from depression himself, owns a print shop in Eagle Rock that he is now too depressed to maintain with any regularity. So she's sort of holding it together. She has a younger sister that she loves deeply and takes care of. And she has, even though she would tell you, again, loudly and emphatically that she doesn't act anymore, she has a secret pet project, which is that she is directing and acting as part of like a community theater group in downtown LA that is like the scruffiest, dingiest community theater group that you will ever encounter.
Mm-hmm. And so Fiona was the star of a teen soap.
Yes.
And so let's talk about Birds of California. It's an amazing title for a teen soap. It's just like an amazing title. And when I was reading the book and thinking about, you write about the show and things that happened on the show and the place that the show takes up in sort of the national consciousness.
Yes.
Because Fiona obviously starred in that show with Sam, who is, again, a complicated person. He's adorable and also kind of a jerk in that way where you love to read about him. But so I'm just sort of curious, because to me, I was reading it and I was going, oh, well, this is Birds of California is Dawson's Creek, or it's Felicity, or because that's like my or our generation of teen soap. But I'm curious, like, was there one that was in your mind, or one or two that felt like, oh no, it's more like One Tree Hill, or it's Gossip Girl, or like what?
I would say it was more like, for me, it was Dawson's Creek, like by way of the Hallmark Channel. Like I think it was like slightly more wholesome.
Yeah, more like a Seventh Heaven sort of situation.
This is a thing that has like made its way onto your social media, but like there's like a thing that I've seen that is like people just posting like on TikTok, just like contextless like snippets of Seventh Heaven.
I haven't seen them, but boy, I bet it's good.
It's bonkers. Yeah. But yeah, I think that like I mean, like Dawson's Creek was obviously at the time like so edgy.
Oh my God.
Yes. And I think Birds of California was like sort of, at least in my mind, was like, sort of squeaky clean, like tackling issues, but like also like in a sophisticated way.
Yes. Yes. I love it. Seventh Heaven did not occur to me until you said that. But I think part of what you do, and you render it very well, is that Hollywood is often pretending to be one thing while actually being something else. And certainly there's a lot of this in that. There's a lot of that in this story. Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was really cute is Julia Whalen, who is the audio book narrator for Birds of California and a friend of both of ours, texted me earlier today. Now, Julia Whalen was a child actor and was on a show, on a network show that, I mean, it wasn't a teen show, but it was a family drama, not dissimilar to Birds of California.
No, it was called Once Again, and I loved it.
Yeah. And so I want to read verbatim what Julie texted me earlier, which is, I'm going to be in the studio during your event tonight, but if you could ask Katie where she gets off writing former child actors so well, that would be great. And tell her I want my diary back. Which is to say, I think you've done a beautiful job.
Thank you.
Telling this story. And it's one that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't think you love LA that much. You're not like a big LA person, but you decided to set one here. So I'm curious, I would imagine it's because fame allows you to talk about some of these issues, but I'm just curious, what was it like setting a story in Hollywood?
Yeah. It's not that I don't love LA that much. I mean, I don't love LA that much. I'm emphatically I was born in New York. I lived in Boston for 20 years. Like I am a dyed in the wool Northeasterner. Like I always say that like I get off the plane when I like get into LA and I like immediately turn into George Costanza. I just like start to like kvetch. Like I don't I just like there's just something about it that I don't trust. It's just everyone's so nice looking. I don't the weather's so good.
I get it.
It just always feels like there's something else afoot.
There is.
Yes,
so I think you're right about that.
But having said that, it is such an iconic fairy tale of a place, at least like from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
It's so romantic, it's so cinematic. But it is also like a place where like people, like moderately famous people, even, you know, like people like who do commercials, like people who are like involved in the industry, but like aren't, you know, like George Clooney, like live and like, you know, have to like go to the dry cleaners and like, like do those things, which is always so interesting to me. Like my like sweet spot, I'm always interested in people who are like a little bit famous, like like Hallmark level actors, where you're always like, do I know you from somewhere?
She's more famous than a tiny bit more famous than that. But
oh yeah,
this morning I was in Malibu and I went to get a burrito, and the woman in line in front of me was Leighton Meester.
Amazing.
She was just like in her sweatpants, you know, like not like she was just like grabbing her lunch, you know. And I feel like Leighton Meester probably has like, I mean, I don't know in terms of like their story, but in terms of the space that they occupy in the world, like Fiona and Leighton Meester are like not dissimilar.
No, not at all. So it was like, it was fun for me to write in that way. And also it's just like always a fun challenge for me to try and like nail the sense of place in a place that I don't personally live. My friend Robin Benway did a pass for me specifically that was like, here are the roads they would drive on. And like, here's how long it takes to get from point A to point B. And she sent me like a full paragraph, like, here's how the menu works at In-N-Out, like just like all that kind of local color. You know, like things like the flowers that would be growing in like outside Sam's apartment, stuff like that. That like, you don't think it matters, but it does matter when you're
matter. Yeah. And I think, you know, I think this is a book that when you open it up, you feel like you're in California. It has such a strong sense of time and place. And I think if you haven't been to Los Angeles or you live in Los Angeles, it feels like Los Angeles. And it feels like, you know, I'm always looking for books that are transportive. Obviously, I live in Los Angeles, so it wasn't for me in terms of, you know, but it would, I think it very much would be. If you feel like you want to go to LA in your mind, I think this is a really good book to do that.
That is a big compliment coming from you now, Angelino, former Bostonian. I love that.
I know. I've actually lived in Los Angeles longer than I lived in Boston, which is, yeah. So you and I went to college together.
We did.
And we were resident advisors together. And the reason that we are friends is because I just made you be friends with me. I was like, hi, Katie, I'm Taylor. We're friends now, I feel like. And what I think is really remarkable about you, and has been for me, day one of meeting you, is that you have just always been a writer. It was just, to me, very plain as day that it was something that lived inside you. It was a talent that you had and that you worked on. And I remember your first novel when it was published. I was so incredibly excited for you, but I was also really, really excited for me because in college you had started writing it on a live journal, and I had read a little bit of it, and I would get so excited every time you published a new chapter. I would be in the little building at Emerson College, and I would be you know, waiting for something, and I would just check, like, has Katie, you know, posted another one? And I would get so excited. I looked forward to it. And I wasn't the least bit surprised that book got published, because I loved it.
So loving. Thank you.
Well, it's true. And I guess, you know, for my experience as a writer was just, I didn't know who I was in college. I didn't know yet. And I looked at you, and so you always knew. It just felt like you always knew. And so for a long time, I think it was like, well, Katie Cotugno's, So my question in my very long paragraph is leading up to, how did you start out so good and only get better?
That's very loving.
But also, what has this journey been like to get here today? Because you knew, at what point did you know this was a part of who you were?
That is a great question. First, I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to tell the story of the first time I ever talked to you. I don't know if I think I've told you this, but it was, so Taylor and I were RAs together, and RAs they show up on campus like a few weeks or like before everyone else, so they can like do training and make decorations and that kind of thing. And the summer before I was to start doing that, Taylor was working at the housing office at Emerson, and I was like waiting all summer for like someone to like, I don't know, send me a letter and give me instructions or something. And I like had anxiety that ramped up like closer, like more and more the closer and closer we got. And so finally I called the office and I was like, this is Katie Cotugno. I'm just calling to make sure I haven't missed anything. And Taylor lovingly was like, nope, you haven't missed anything. And like, that is just like, when I think of you, like, that's your vibe. You were like, you just figure it out. You're like, you haven't missed anything. You're okay. To answer your question, I have a very limited skill set. I've only ever really wanted to tell stories. I've only ever really been good at telling stories. And to be completely honest with you, I'm learning actually as I grow as a writer and as I get older that maybe this isn't true, but I think that I'm not only good at telling a certain kind of story, but I am best at telling a certain kind of story, which is like a messy, complicated love story. Mm-hmm. I like come from a fandom background. Like I have never like in my entire life consumed a piece of media and not been like, are they going to kiss? Like
that's the thing of like, when we were in college, like that was always the thing.
Yes.
Like, you and I of anyone were like, yeah, this movie's great, but when are they going to kiss?
When are they going to kiss?
Like we would watch SVU and we were like, these crimes are terrible, but when are they going to kiss?
I feel like
we just wanted Olivia Benson and Stabler to kiss.
I feel like we once watched the movie Philadelphia and I was like, is there any like that's how I watch professional hockey. It's just really how I experience the world.
This is the thing is you've said this for such a long time, is you love and I do too. And I think that's part of why I've just been a fan of your work for so long, is that shows in what you're writing, is just that it feels good to swoon.
Yes, it does. It does feel good to swoon.
Yeah. And you do that, but as self-deprecating and charming as you're being about it, I don't think it's true that you have a limited skill set. I think that it's true that you're very, very good at one particular thing that, is very hard to be good at. And so when you were a kid, did you know, was it when you were a teenager? Was it by the time you declared your major at Emerson, at what point did you say to yourself, this is what I want to do?
I mean, I think it was when I was like, I think I was in like 4th or 5th grade. Like it's been a long time. Yeah, it's been a really long time. And I'm very lucky that like I came from a family that was like, that when I said, I think I want to go to a liberal arts college to like study creative writing. They were like, oh, like they let me do that. They were like, okay, we believe in you. And like, that's not nothing. Like not everyone gets that.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, I mean, Emerson is a lot of things, but like one thing that I did really like about being there was like being around a lot of people who knew what they wanted to do and like who took what they did seriously, like even if they were 18 years old. Like I think that like meant a lot to me as like an incoming freshman.
Yeah, I think we definitely went to a college. Like I remember touring Emerson College, and we like ran into someone in the dorms, and I think the people that I was with were like, what's your one piece of advice about Emerson College, whatever. And this girl was like, it's not a college, it's a trade school. And I was like, oh, like I thought that was so interesting that it's a bunch. It's there's all sorts of different people at any college, but it has a large portion of students who are very, very serious about what they want to do and are pursuing that goal. And to me, you always seemed that. I felt like I was trying to figure it out a little bit, but to me, it was like, you know, Katie knows. And I think that shows in your writing, quite frankly. I think you've had a strong voice since day one. I think I can tell you a paragraph that you've written because you wrote it, and it's been that way, you know, for 15, 20 years. And I'm just very impressed by that. And it shows in the people that love your work. Get your questions in the Q&A, because we're gonna go to that soon, but I have a couple more questions for Katie before we do that. So you have a few more minutes. You write about love so beautifully. And I think love is a thing that is hard to write about in a way that feels original, because obviously so many of us are doing it, but whether it's a YA novel or an adult novel, and you also have your romance novels, you're able to write about love and sex in a way that feels original and comfortable and confident. And so I'm curious how you came to that, or if you have a specific approach in how you achieve it.
Yeah, that is a great question. I mean, I feel like a good sex scene is like 30% body parts and like 70% like feelings, like characterization, like that kind of thing. Like I feel like it's such a good opportunity, like a sex scene to like to catch your characters in like a vulnerable, intimate moment, and to like really sort of like peel back the layers of who they are. And like if they happen to be naked at the time, like
all the better.
And I mean, like, again, like part of it is like, you know, having spent my formative years, like writing secret, dirty fan fiction, like I'm very comfortable in it, like writing about that kind of stuff. And also like, I don't know, I feel like obviously like everyone likes what they like and has different levels of like what they're comfortable with, you know, in terms of like what they want to see on the page. But for me, at least, like, in a book like Birds of California, where like the romance is the thing, the relationship is the thing. If I am following these two characters like through this story, and then like we get to the bedroom door and they close it in my face, I'm like, hey, like, guys.
There's this great gif of the comedian Monique that she's just on a talk show and she's saying, I would like to see that. That's all that's just what she's saying. But I've so often seen romance fans who are like, you know, when the two main characters get together and then it fades to black. It's like, I would like to see that.
I would like to see that. Always.
I feel like I once had a friend who was reading my books and she was like, you know, you always know when to cut to black, was what she said, which I thought was a really nice compliment. But it is interesting because I think as a reader, I want something different than what I want to do as a writer. And what I want to do as a writer is like, and then they fall onto the bed, you know?
I don't think that, I would say, like, I feel like there's sex like right at the beginning of Malibu Rising that's so like,
oh yeah, well,
and character driven, and
yeah.
But I definitely take your point where like, yeah, sometimes you're like, I'll just leave this here, and
yeah, like you guys can figure it out. But I feel like in your hands, I mean, this is, and I feel this way about Sally Rooney too. I think that you know, it's never gratuitous. It's always with purpose. It's always thoughtful and is telling you something about this world, these people, this moment in time. And I just think that's really hard to do. And I think that you should be commended for that because
thanks, pal.
You're a boss.
A sex boss.
So, yeah, exactly. So we'll pivot to the Q&A soon. I have two questions for you that are less about writing. One is, how did you get such a beautiful cover?
Oh my gosh.
Cover is like, I mean, it's to die for.
It's incredibly beautiful. I feel I'm gonna just like show it to you guys one more time.
Like, I can't get over it. So I would, if you made that wallpaper, I would wallpaper a room in it.
They just did such an incredible, the whole team at Harper Perennial is amazing. And they have been such a dream to work with. You know, like I worked with the team at Balzer and Bray with my way for 10 years. And you know, you come on board with a new group of people and you're always like, I don't know, like, you know, is this you're all getting to know each other. And they just like that neon, like the paint, like it just really felt like I felt so seen when they came back with that cover. I was like, oh, like you get the vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really pretty. And then my next question for you is, what are you currently reading?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually just last night finished the new Lucy Foley, The Paris Apartment. I've
Yes.
been reading a lot of thrillers. I
Yeah.
just read, before that, I had read Rachel Hawkins' Reckless Girls.
I haven't read that one yet. I read the Lucy Foley one. Yeah, but Rachel Hawkins is great.
Yes. And like I'm not like, I mean, I like thrillers, but like it's rare for me to like be on a thrillers kick like this. Yeah,
when
like,
they're good, they're good. There's like
so
when
good.
you get like just a readable thriller, that like
Yes.
feels effortless, like there's nothing like it.
Yes. And then next on deck, I have Lily King.
Oh yeah, her new one. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is story, like literary stories, like
Yeah.
very different vibe.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about those.
All right. So we're gonna go to the Q&A now. I'm gonna try to do these in a smart order, but we may go back and forth a little bit. All right. This is from someone who is anonymous, which sounds like it's going to be a dark question, but it's not. It's a great question. Do you think about your characters after you're done writing the novel? Are Sam and Fiona living in your head? Do you hear their voices?
I do. I mean, like, I try to be of the position that like, like once a book is done, it's like not mine anymore. It belongs to everybody else, which is why like I would never, like I would never say like, like publicly, like what, like here, I mean, I say that, but like I probably would if you like got a couple drinks in me.
We know that everything here is null and void
yes.
in the context of, you get a couple drinks in you and then,
fine.
then you'll share. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they do for sure. I mean, like all of my characters are like, you live with these people, like as if they are real for, for months and months and sometimes years at a time. And then you just kind of send them on there. You like send them off to college and hope they write. Like,
I know, but I feel crazy sometimes, but I'm like, I do think they're real. Like they feel real to me.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. Ashley wants to know if you will be best friends with her.
Yes, Ashley, 100%.
Right? I figured you would. Okay. How did you come up with the title? Why Birds of California?
Birds, like I feel like it's very rare. But every once in a while, like the title just like comes with the idea.
Yeah.
I don't know, like if there have been books that you've written where you've experienced that. But like this one, like I toyed with Birds of America at the beginning. But like it was always Birds of something. But like I don't know, Birds of California just felt more like
it sounds good. It's intriguing. Yeah.
It just kind of felt like a show that might have been like Dawson's
100%. This is what I'm saying. Like one of the things about Hollywood, writing about Hollywood, is you have to. It's really, really difficult to make a fake show or a fake movie or whatever it is seem real. And with Birds of California, the show within the book, you made it seem real. I was like, it felt like a real show to me. And I do think that back in the day, the WB would totally have a show called Birds of California.
Yeah. 8 p.m. slot for wholesomeness.
That's exactly right. And then Dawson's can be after where
great.
Pacey's sleeping with his English teacher or whatever it was. Okay, this is Jill. How do you start writing one of your books? Is it the plot first, the characters? Do you do an outline? Curious of your process because you write very enjoyable books.
Thank you. I feel like the writerly answer to this question, and I will be interested to hear your take too, Taylor, is like the writerly answer is like I always start with characters first. But for me, it's like sort of, especially if you like come from a program like a writing program like Emerson or whatever, like it's sort of like hacky to start with the plot. But like I always start with the not necessarily with the plot, but with the situation.
Yeah.
So, like, for Birds, it was like a girl who used to be famous and then burned out and isn't famous anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's how you get to who Fiona is, right? Like that's like you have that idea and then that's so then you ask yourself like, okay, who is the girl? And then that's how you find it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And I do always outline. And I usually like my first draft is like it's like a zero draft. Like it is like basically just an extended outline. It's just like me sort of telling
interesting.
myself, yeah. It's just like me sort of telling myself the story. And then I feel like I don't necessarily know who those characters are until I get to like the end of that zero draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I've like walked them through a bunch of, I've moved them around a bunch. And then I'm like, oh, you're this kind of person. And then I can like go back
and then you have to go back. Yeah.
Yes.
I feel the same. My first draft, I always say, like, if people saw my first draft, they take away my book deals, because it's like they're all met, like characters that didn't exist at the beginning suddenly start existing as if they were in it the whole time. And like, characters are super inconsistent. And I just feel like you're playing around to like get to know everybody. And then, like you find out what your book's about when you finish the first draft. And then you have to go and rewrite it so that it's about what you want it to be about. Yeah, that's how, but I don't outline, and I probably should.
How long does a first draft, I mean, like, this is inside baseball, I feel like, how long does a first draft take you if you don't outline?
I do it based on word count per day. So I'll basically give myself like 6 or 8 weeks to do a first draft. And it's just like, oh, I don't know what happens next. And it's like, I'm just like, first drafts are just the worst to me, because every single day I'm trying to make something out of nothing. And to me, it's way easier once you have like just a pile of crap, then you can make it into something else. But like trying to make crap out of nothing is like way harder to me. But I really do think, like, and I always say this, but I think this time is true, on my next book, I'm going to outline. This is Jessica, how was writing adult fiction different than YA? What was easier? What was harder?
That's a really good question. I think what was most exciting was, and I mean, not that like, I mean, anything can happen in a YA book too, but like, just like the like sudden feeling of like capaciousness, I guess. Like, I felt like I had a lot more room all of a sudden. And that felt very exciting. And I mean, again, a lot of that could have been like, because I was not writing under contract. But I guess at least in my YA, it has felt like you're working a lot of times like within the school year, or like within within a summer. And so your book like sort of has like an inherent narrative like timeline that like I like in Birds, I was like, oh, it's just like, I don't know, a time of year, I guess. I was like, it's California, it doesn't even matter what time of
it does.
Not.
It's every day the same over here. Would you ever consider writing a sequel or novella for this story?
So again, I would never I would never say never, because I used to say never. Like, so when I wrote 99 Days, is like a book that I wrote specifically because I wanted to see if I could, one, write a true love triangle, and two, write a book with like an open ending. And like, that was the point. And I was like very smug about it. And I was like, look at this craft exercise that I've completed. And then like, 2 years later, they were like, you want to write a sequel? And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I mean, I would never say never. But it does feel, I mean, like something like 99 Days that has an open ending felt like it lended itself to a sequel more easily than this book. I will say that the book I am working on right now is not related, but does take place and like the characters don't overlap, but it does take place in like the same universe.
Okay, so that's interesting. We have a lot of questions that are curious about two things. And so I'll give you both of them, and then you tackle them how you want to. What are you working on next? What can we expect next? And two, do you plan to write more adult novels? And those are questions from Jen and Hannah. Yes, I do certainly plan to write more adult. And I will not tell you what I am working on next in the adult world, because one, I have not sold it yet, and two, it's like very much in that zero draft phase where I'm like, this is garbage. It's going to be good, but it's just not good yet. But I have a YA coming out next spring that's called Liar's Beach, and it is unlike anything that I have ever done before in YA, which has been really exciting. It's a mystery. It's like a smart, sexy whodunit. So excited.
It's It's so much fun. It takes place on Martha's Vineyard. It is loosely based on Agatha Christie's first published novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. So it's like a bunch of rich people moving around in a big house and someone dies.
Oh, so good.
I know. I had never worked on a mystery before, and I have to say I was like, and it's still obviously like recognizably a Katie Cotugno book, like there's kissing in it. But it was much more difficult than I was anticipating it to be. Like, it's just, mysteries are really hard, and to like write one that is convincing and like, you know, to like go through and like plant your clues and plant your red herrings and like not get like
stay ahead of the reader as much as you can. It's
I don't know if you have experienced this, but like for me at least, in like now that I have been writing for so long, like it's when I'm reading mysteries, it's like really hard for me not to like get ahead of the book. Because you're just like always turning it over to like look at how it's made.
Well, and also I feel like when you know how information has to be relayed, you pick up on things in a different way. Like even now, like I'll read stuff and I'll be like, well, you didn't have to mention this piece, you know? And it's like the fact that you did now, I think you grow savvy to how a writer does it. And so it can be harder to trick us. Or maybe everyone is as savvy as us and we just think that
maybe we're just feeling ourselves
self-congratulatory writers. I'm really stoked that you're doing a mystery. I'm really, really stoked with that, because I feel like what's wrong with most mysteries is that they don't have kissing. They don't have enough kissing.
I agree.
So meld these together. You got yourself a hit.
I hope so. We'll see. Instead of so the like iconic detective from the, I mean, there are a lot of iconic Agatha Christie detectives, but Hercule Poirot is the one that like has always been most special to me. I grew up in a house of like PBS nerds, and we like watched a lot of mystery. And so in Liar's Beach, instead of Hercule Poirot, she's like a brash, brilliant teen girl. Her name is Holiday Proctor. And she has like a hot but dopey sidekick named Lyndon, who is our narrator. And there are going to be at least 2 Holiday Proctor books. So I am hopeful that we can like, you know, sort of unspool their relationship a little bit as time
I love that. Okay, Jill is asking, when you write about an area like Martha's Vineyard, do you go there and immerse yourself in the area to build your knowledge, or do you tend to write about places you already know, or, you know, or certainly with Hollywood, it's probably a little bit of both. So how much do you immerse yourself in the area?
I would say it is like, I mean, most of the time it's a little bit of both. I like definitely always like try to get to a place if it is at least once, if it's not a place that I am familiar with. But I am also, and I feel like this is not like a thing that you're supposed to admit about yourself as a writer, I'm a very lazy writer.
Oh my God, me too.
If I cannot research something and hand wave it, I will always hand wave it.
People are like, oh, did you interview people? And I'm like, you want me to talk to other people? No, I'm a writer, so I don't have to talk to anyone else. I'm not calling up anybody. No. If it's not available on Wikipedia, I got it wrong. It's like my policy.
Like Google Earthing it.
Oh, Google Earth so many times. I will go to great lengths to find a piece of information and not call someone. But here's also the thing is like, you do a really good job of making it come to life, even if, you know, you didn't interview somebody about it or
always like, sounds true. Seems legit.
Right? It sounds true. Megan wants to know, what is the artwork behind you?
It says, one day I'll write a book. I'm going to tell you guys something. So I am in my my basement of my house. We like just redid this space. We just finished it. And I like came down, this is like the first like Zoom I'm doing in this space. And I came down here this morning to like, you know, like stack my computer on my books and all those kinds of things. And there was no art on the walls. And I realized it like really it looked like either an insane asylum or like a Jamiroquai video. It just like looked so weird. And so when my husband came home for lunch, I was like, I need you to hang me a picture downstairs.
Well, it worked. It's the perfect one. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your hard work. All right, so we're almost done, but I'll just ask a few small ones here. Kyle wants to know if you are going to go on tour around the West Coast anytime soon.
Kyle, I just missed you. I was in LA. I did an event at the Ripped Bodice a few weeks ago. But the good news is that like I hope to write more books, and I like will definitely be back on the West Coast ASAP, I hope.
And Rachel wants to know, what advice do you have for young writers and or current Emerson students?
Oh my gosh. I think I always say, which I feel like is like, I read everything, read all the things, read weird stuff, read stuff that you don't think you're gonna like. And also like read a lot of stuff that you do like. But also I feel like more important than that is to, and I actually feel like this is a particularly Emerson piece of advice, which is like to just not be afraid to like love the weird stuff that you love, like even if you love it a weird amount. In a way that like you worry makes you like strange or uncool, like an RA.
You know what? I have spent my whole life just passionately loving things and being made fun of for it, but like it feels good.
It feels so good. Yes,
it does. Okay, well, this has been so fun, and
I just adore you. Thank you.
I feel similarly, and I'm just so proud of you, and just you just continue to outdo yourself in a way that is so lovely to watch from afar, and to be a fan of someone that I also like so much is a real pleasure for me. So thank you for just kicking ass time and again. I have some things that I'm supposed to tell people.
Tell the people the things.
Remembered to do it. So one, if you purchase signed copies, they will be mailed shortly, and they should be to you within 8 to 10 business days. That's number one. And number two, Birds of California and all of Katie's books are available on barnesandnoble.com and also in local Barnes and Noble stores. And there are links to do that somewhere in here. I'm not in charge of the links. They knew that wouldn't get done if I was put in charge of it. But I think I speak for everyone here when I say thank you for giving us another Katie Cotugno book. We are blessed to have it, and we just cannot wait to see what you do next.
Taylor, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you guys all for coming. Thanks to Barnes & Noble for having us. And let's do it again soon.
Done and done. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. Thank you.